This week's episode of the Wildcard Podcast is brought to you by Secret Messages. Secret Messages. Gentlemen, I have collected cryptic texts from several locations around the Wildcard studio, and they are each written in a secret code. I gathered the first piece of evidence left behind by the boogeyman in the box trap.
It's the complete unabridged works of Shakespeare.
Why did the boogeyman have that?
The second I found attached to this battle axe in Drake's corpse.
Where's the corpse?
Why? How many times do we have to kill that guy?
And finally, I found the cipher, the key to everything. It was on a piece of paper attached to Ron's shoe.
That's what that was.
So give me just a moment while I decode this. I've got to scrawl out the math here. Oh, guys, it's a sigmoidal transposition.
He just drew a picture.
Here we have to use the pi matrix. That'll do.
The pi matrix. Yuri Geller and I invented that.
Does that star Keanu Reeves?
Derive the integral from this, and I get double slippery.
Did he just say?
Carry the niner, and boom, gentlemen. The secret message is: be sure to drink your Ovaltine. Son of a bitch.
Is that it?
What a crummy commercial.
Welcome to the Wildcard Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Eaton, and my co-pilots on this journey to wherever are my good friends, Jeff Curtis.
Aloha.
And...
Oh, Jeff.
also known as... Ron Blair.
What? What was that?
Well, it was. I mean, it
was a long pause.
No, it wasn't a long pause. I said your name in sign language.
Oh.
And then I said it in Braille.
Okay.
I speak both of those fluently.
Okay.
I speak sign language.
I've seen Jared speak
and I speak Braille.
It's
so
fantastic.
It's fun to watch his lips
Yeah,
pucker
really
up and make
impressive.
those little dots. So you have to get the right order. But you have to feel it with your fingers while he's doing it.
Right.
You weren't touching his lips while he was speaking in Braille.
No, and
that's why you didn't understand what he was saying.
That's why you kept interrupting me while I was speaking sign language.
I, of course, because I know that he's talking in Braille, was touching his lips the entire time with my fingers.
Jeff's a little more enlightened than you are.
That's true. I thought you were just doing my nickname in parentheses.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Insert name here.
Yeah. Of course not. No, we're more enlightened out here. We speak all the languages very fluently. So,
absolutely.
All of them.
All the best languages.
Speaking of, will you tell us what the podcast is all about?
This podcast is about gibberish, gobbledygook, and our viewers who are able to ascertain from that gibberish and gobbledygook some kind of meaning that enriches their lives.
That's the point.
That's exactly what we are.
Gobbledygook that enriches our viewers' lives.
Well, it happens. I can't explain how it happens.
We could just come...
sure. Our listeners.
We could just come right
both
out.
Both of them, both of you guys.
20. We have 20.
We got 20.
Tony and Emily are listening.
Yeah. Right.
Wendy
Wendy religiously listens.
Yeah.
Moira listens.
We could.
The Webbers listen now.
We could be very overt with the wisdom we want to share, but we want them to be able to find what they need. Therefore, we cover this in bullshit.
Exactly. I had a hell of a time figuring out my life. Why should I make it any easier on anybody else by explaining, my experience?
Well, speaking of finding out our lives,
those people.
We like to do theater on occasion. We've been known to be a part of theatrical productions, and just this past week, Bart Levins announced during the pre-show speech, Mamma Mia, that next year's Pac Pro-Am Fall Musical is Young Frankenstein.
You heard it here first, or
you were
second,
there,
probably second.
Or on the internet.
Probably second or third hand information here, but we're giving it to you here.
And I could not have possibly been more excited.
No, I like that.
There are not many shows he could have announced that I would have been more excited about than this one.
Well, it's an updated, it's a modern musical. It's a great, fun... It's different from the standards.
And we've done good shows at the Pac.
Sure.
I think Wizard of Oz was solid. Sound of Music was good. I really think
Little Mermaid was one of my
really
favorites.
fun.
Hunchback was
incredible. But nothing with this kind of humor. With the exception maybe like Lend Me a Tenor.
Right.
But no, that's not a
That's the
musical.
closest thing. That's absolutely the closest thing.
And so I'm excited to try to do some big stage comedy at the Pac, because I've never really gotten to do much comedy. I mean, there have been funny moments and things.
It's rare anybody has an opportunity to do comedy at the Pac.
Yeah.
I think I've done one.
Yeah. And
that's one more than most of you guys
I've
have done at the
gotten
Pac,
to do some awkward things. I've had funny moments in shows.
That's it, but you haven't been in flat out comedy. They don't do flat out comedy most of the time. which is great.
But I do think that
I mean, it's great that
think
we're doing comedy.
it has music
I
that
love
will
it.
stand up to pretty much every show we've done, maybe with the exception of Hunchback.
Yeah.
Because Hunchback's music was just another level, I think.
Yeah, it
Mamma
was
Mia had,
excellent.
my
It was
father came and saw
excellent.
Mamma Mia, and he said it was his favorite music he's heard at the Pack. And I'm like, well, thanks, Dad. That's incredibly sweet of you to say. My father is not a musician. Like, he doesn't,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
It's fun music, but it's not near Hunchback's music.
But
And
here's the thing. I've had a goddamn ABBA song in my head every day, every morning, all week long, and it's pissing me off a little bit.
Which one?
All of them.
well, I know you love The Winner Takes It All, so I was wondering if Jen's performance of
Not
that
once.
was...
I keep thinking about her performance, but
Yeah.
not once has that one been stuck in my mind.
And
It's
the-
usually Take a Chance on Me, and then Mamma Mia Today was
Yeah.
the song.
Well, but ABBA songs are written to be stuck in your head. They were written
they're
for the radio.
earworms.
They were not. I mean, Mamma Mia it's a fun show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the music wasn't written for the musical, so
Right.
you know.
But I've heard the music
comparing
now, so
it
it's like, oh, God.
comparing it to Hunchback.
Yeah.
It's
It can't-
comparing.
there's no
like,
comparison.
Yeah, it's like
There was no
cherries
show we
and
could do after Hunchback
and
that
apples.
was-
And tomatoes. Cherries and apple tomatoes.
Yes.
Wait a
Cherries
second.
and grape tomatoes.
Cherries and grapefruit.
Cherries. Oh, God. I'll eat
like-
half of those. Grapefruits are the... Satan put grapefruits on the earth and said they're healthy.
Go
Fuck
for
you.
it. Go
yeah.
for it.
Yeah, here, give it a try.
Do it.
See if you like it. You'll lose all the weight in the world, but it'll taste like
Joe
shit
loves
always.
grapefruit.
God, they're awful. They're so bitter and gross.
Well, you can put sugar with them.
I've
why you
tried
put
it. I
something else,
hate it.
though?
My mom puts salt
Now,
on
you
it instead.
know-
It brings out the sweetness.
Grapefruit
Yeah,
is
it's weird.
Salty grapefruit.
Yeah.
Grapefruit
She said it
is
works.
contraindicated for several like medicines and things. Like if
Yeah.
you're taking certain medicines, you can't
Yeah.
eat grapefruit.
Yeah.
But anyway, Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
We went off on a tangent.
Everyone's
God, I-
weird.
yeah,
I know it's
imagine
weird.
that.
A tangerine. We went off
A
on.
tangerine. Those I would eat.
Yeah. I would love to hear your thoughts, Deckheads. Listen to the soundtrack for Young Frankenstein. I think you'll enjoy it. But Young Frankenstein is a Mel Brooks show, and I honestly
Yeah.
did not think Mel Brooks would ever appear on the backstage because of Mel Brooks.
Well, yeah,
and
yeah.
the humor it's subtle in some places
Right.
and really not very subtle in
But
others.
it's adult.
It's very
all
adult.
very adult.
So I'm just curious to hear your favorite Mel Brooks movies, Mel Brooks moments, Mel Brooks lines, comedies, things of that nature.
I mean, I love The Producers, the musical.
Yeah.
But I loved the movie long before it was
It's
turned
so
into
funny.
a music.
It's so ridiculous.
It's so unexpected and it's so funny. Just the original movie with Zero Mostel.
Yeah.
Is that who was in
Zero
it?
Mostel and Gene Wilder.
Yeah, and Jill Wilder.
And Kenneth Mars is the writer.
And it's like-
who was brilliant.
it's
and
like-
played Inspector Kemp in Young Frankenstein, by the way. Yeah.
And it's like, it's just freaking amazing.
Yeah,
that movie.
yeah, it's brilliant.
I mean, the musical that Mel Brooks started into for Broadway, then that movie, I love both those two.
Yeah, it's fun.
But I would recommend the original.
See, I'll be honest, I didn't know it was
a
a movie before it was a musical.
Oh, the great
absolutely.
thing about The Producers, if you put yourself in 68, 69, whenever it was made, the only place you could find any kind of comedy like that was Get Smart on TV,
Yeah.
which was created by Mel Brooks.
That's
That's
true.
the-
That's
I didn't
right.
know
That's
that.
the only him and Buck Henry. That's
Yeah.
the only kind of you couldn't get that
He
comedy.
was carrying
anywhere
comedy
else.
on his shoulders.
He really wasn't that. Him and Neil Simon, everybody who wrote for Sid Caesar, ended up carrying comedy on their back. Carl Reiner, Woody Allen, Neil Simon, Mel Brooks, all those guys working together with Sid Caesar, and they created this kind of comedy that
Didn't they all work together on like the Dick Van Dyke Show or something like that?
Carl Reiner did, and
So did Woody Allen, didn't
Woody
he?
Allen did, yes. I think those are the only two that did the Van Dyke Show together. In fact, I think Carl Reiner got the acting job because one of his friends from Sid Caesar, maybe Woody Allen, was a writer on Dick Van Dyke. And since Carl Reiner had worked with him before, that's how he ended up getting the part on the Van Dyke Show. Yeah, so all those guys. Wow. But Mel Brooks specifically, you don't see humor like that. You never will see humor like his. It's unique.
Well, his pushed boundaries in a way that's going to be hard for people to do.
Yeah.
Well,
It
the
seems like
boundaries have been pushed.
There are almost no boundaries left.
That's it. What we were saying before the show. By the time I became a Mel Brooks fan, I was 10 years old. It was the mid-'80s. And the stuff he had introduced that was scintillating and shocking 10 years before was no longer shocking at all.
Yeah.
Well, even in the 70s, I mean, a lot of his stuff was done in the 60s. I mean, 60s and 70s. But
Late 60s, early 70s. Yeah.
So, I think Spaceballs was probably the first Mel Brooks movie I ever saw in the movie theaters.
Oh, bless your heart.
By then, his movie making stuff was more in decline.
Yeah.
So every Mel Brooks movie I've seen, virtually, not all of them, but most of them, were on TV where they've been edited for commercials
Right.
and,
Okay.
and content and stuff like that. and yet they're still an amazingly fun ride.
The writing is so clever. It's so brilliant and absurd.
Right.
And I think part of the problem is Spaceballs, whenever that came out, the Zaz brothers had already been doing Airplane, The Naked Gun, all of their stuff. And so parody had become popular at that point. So Mel Brooks was trying to keep up with it, and he was aging.
Instead of pioneering.
Exactly. He was no longer the pioneer of that kind of humor. And so I consider Spaceballs the first decline.
He was no
of Mel
longer
Brooks.
blazing trails, is that what you're saying?
Or saddles.
I wouldn't say it like that.
I said it.
I know you
the
did.
thing is, if you look at his movies, the parodies that he was doing were very unique.
Yeah.
Like Silent Movie, and,
Right.
And even Young Frankenstein, the movie. It's like
horror.
Walk this way. The Aerosmith song "Walk This Way" is based on that line.
Is
from
it
that
really?
movie.
I didn't know that.
They had written the song, but they didn't have the lyrics. They didn't know what it was about, and they're about to abandon it. Then they went to the movies and they saw Young Frankenstein.
Oh, that's
and
great.
he said, "Walk this way," and Steven Tyler said, "That's what the song is. Walk this way."
How badass is that?
This way.
But even if you look at Mel Brooks's 12 Chairs, which I think he did before the producers,
I haven't seen 12 Chairs.
it's not what you'd expect from a Mel Brooks movie. It's still very funny, but it's based on an old Yiddish folk tale about around the 1914 when Tsar Nicholas II was thrown out by the Bolsheviks or the proletariat, whatever that was. Like a year later, it became a communist, but there was that 1 year of Bolsheviks, and apparently this farmer or peasant or somebody had a relative that knew about gems that were sewn into one of the Tsar's chairs that was taken out of the castle, and so he and this con man buddy of his go on a journey to find the last chair, the 12th chair that has these jewels sewn in it. And it's funny. It's more Yiddish than it is what we come to think of as Mel Brooks. But it's a fine film. But it shows you that Mel Brooks has these Yiddish roots. So much of his humor in the movies are Jewish based.
Well, as much of the New York television humor and theater humor is. Also, History of the World Part 1 and 2, that was Mel Brooks too.
Yeah, well, there was no Part 2. There was never intended
one,
for Part 2.
Well,
I actually read up on it. Those were sketches that didn't make the movie, but they were so funny that they didn't want to let go of the Viking funeral or Jews in space. And so they went ahead and teased a Part 2 at the end of Part 1 with all the garbage that they were going to throw away. Yeah, kind of the outtakes. They were going to throw this stuff away. And Jews in space is so damn funny in concept. You can't throw that away. You can't get rid of that. Or a Viking funeral. That's funny as hell.
What are your thoughts on Robin Hood Men in Tights?
It's post Spaceballs. That's the problem. That was even worse than Spaceballs. The Spaceballs wasn't awful. Not compared to.
It wasn't awful. It was a Star Wars parody, right?
Right. Roger Ebert said it was just too late for Star Wars parody. The last one had come out 3 years before, but while it was funny, it still wasn't the energy that Mel Brooks.
Yeah, the energy wasn't there, and it felt like they was just working too hard to make it work.
Yeah. So
it wasn't natural anymore.
And Men in Tights, I don't think is dreadful, but I think it still suffers from that Spaceballs kind of. It's not cutting edge anymore. You're not pushing the envelope. And then by the time Dracula Dead and Loving It came out, oh Mel, what have you done?
Which is why and then he didn't do anything for quite a while. And then he came back to the producers on stage.
And he did Get Smart Again, another one of his own properties.
Which is so goddamn funny. Though, It's so funny.
Yeah.
Get Smart. I didn't think it'd be funny. It got horrible reviews.
Mm-hmm.
The one with Steve Carell. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. It's hilarious. Yeah. It's great. Now, the one Mel Brooks movie that I adore is High Anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Most people forget about High Anxiety.
I forgot about it,
funny.
but I love High Anxiety.
It's a Hitchcock.
It's
based on Hitchcock films. Holy shit. And nobody ever talks about High Anxiety ever, but it's so damn
Which
funny.
is why we have to edit this out of the podcast, because we can't have anyone talking about it.
Right, no, it's the secret project. But High Anxiety. And that's when he got in really with Rudy DeLuca, who he was the Jaws character in High Anxiety that strangles him at the phone booth. And went on to write with him later on. That and Life Stinks, which is another one that is not real.
Not heard of that one.
Nobody has. It flopped at the box office. Leslie Ann Warren was in it, Miss Scarlet. She is fucking terrible in that movie. She is awful. But the movie's kind of fun. It makes a good statement about the poor. It's about Mel Brooks, and he gets screwed out of all his money. He's this wealthy guy. And so Jeffrey Tambor, who is his nemesis, bets him that he can't live 30 days on the street with no money because he's so used to being a spoiled, rich New York businessman. So Mel Brooks takes him up on the bet. Well, after 30 days, Jeffrey Tambor screws him out of coming back. Yeah, he's going to leave him there in the street. So it's really about a classist uprising that Mel Brooks starts in the streets among the homeless people. And
it's almost like Trading Places with the Eddie Murphy movie.
A little bit, except there's no trade.
Right.
It's just Mel Brooks going out there. But yeah, it is. How is he gonna be poor among the homeless for a month?
Yeah.
And it becomes kind of endearing. There's some drama in it. It's not like Mel Brooks, but it's really good. And To Be or Not to Be, that's another one nobody ever talks about. Because it's so damn funny. He didn't direct that one. I don't think he did.
But he wrote it, right?
I think he wrote it, and he starred in it. It's his movie.
Well, as you know, it's hard to direct and star in the same thing.
Oh, I don't know that I ever want to try that. I've done it on film, and I get distracted on film, and my performance isn't good as a director or as a performer because you're focusing on too much.
You're not giving 100% to anything.
Right.
Something I try to tell students a lot when they're getting involved in school. I'm like, getting involved is really important, but if you get too involved, then you might as well be doing nothing.
Well, it reminds me of Rushmore, where the kid is the worst student on earth, but he's involved with every single every single extracurricular activity out there. Max Fleischer, that's a funny one. So, I'm just looking up to see who directed To Be or Not to Be.
It was Hamlet.
It was Hamlet. Hamlet directed To Be or Not to Be.
Francis Bacon.
That is the question.
Yeah.
That's right.
Bacon.
Yes,
Francis.
Bacon.
Wait. Well, while Ron is looking this up, I will go ahead and begin our transition. This is a patented Jeffisode.
Oh,
so you know you are in for some high-quality content.
This is the stuff right here.
Especially since Ron can't use his phone. Well, he's taking forever.
I seem to not be able to use my phone
Here comes
hardly
a
at
stall.
all right
We
now.
are stalling right now. Okay, Jeff, go ahead and take over.
Let's just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, let's do this.
Let me see if you guys can identify the difference between a couple. This is my opening question.
I love
Jared
it.
likes
Great
opening questions.
question.
It's a small question, and it has very little to do with what we're talking about.
Perfect.
But it'll,
Even better.
It'll
Great.
lead us up. Okay. What is the name of the actor who starred in Ironside and Perry Mason?
Oh, that's shit. Is it William?
The Conqueror.
William the Conqueror. Is his first name William?
No, his first name is not William.
Oh, damn it! I know this. So when you're going to say it, it's going to piss me off.
All
that I
right,
didn't
so
get it.
hold on to that. Hold on to your knowledge of that.
Good.
And let's contrast this with who was the third vice president of the United States?
Who's the first?
Third.
Oh, the third. Thomas Jefferson.
He was the third
No,
president
John
of the United
Adams.
States.
Sorry.
No.
Jesus. What?
Vice president.
Oh, Vice President. Spiro Agnew.
No.
Alan Johnson directed
No.
To Be or Not to Be.
Okay, good. We got to that.
Okay.
So, one of them is named Aaron Burr. One of them is named Raymond Burr. Who is who?
Oh,
Aaron Burr's
Raymond
vice
Burr
president.
shot Alexander
Wait.
Hamilton. Aaron Burr
That is-
was a chubby guy who was in Airplane 2.
No.
Not a lot of people know
Raymond
this.
Burr is the chubby guy who was in Airplane 2.
dang
And Aaron Burr is the guy who was the third vice president of
We'll
the
agree
United
to
States.
disagree on that one.
No, we won't, because
Are we talking Hamilton? Are we
are
going to
not
wrap
go-
through this?
we are not going to wrap through this, but
Okay.
we are going to be talking history and treason.
Oh, bit of treason going on.
A bit of treason
mild
going
bit of
on with
treason.
our
Oh, yeah.
history. So, we are going to be talking about Aaron Burr, the third vice president of the
Aaron Burr,
United
sir.
States. It's also
That's right.
probably most famous for killing Hamilton in a
Hamilton.
duel.
That's literally the only thing I remember at him from my
Oh,
history.
well.
In a horribly tragic misunderstanding, which is awful.
Not really.
He was wearing his glasses.
That's
Would
not.
Burr have shot him if he wasn't wearing his glasses?
Oh, we're going to get into the duel.
Lin-Manuel Miranda tells me he would not have.
Well, Lin-Manuel Miranda, I have not finished listening to the end of Hamilton. I've listened to most of it,
Yeah.
but like the last 4 or 5 songs I haven't gotten to because it takes so long to get through the show that
essentially
I
Hamilton.
always run out of time.
Yeah.
The soundtrack's like 9 or 10 hours long.
I love the
It's
soundtrack,
enormous.
but it's like listening to a book on tape, and by the time it just goes on too long, I run out of time.
Yeah.
I don't have time to devote the last 15 minutes to the actual duel because
Right.
I've run out of time.
Well, it's essentially most soundtracks you
Yeah.
listen to, you're getting to like an hour and something of music. and then there's dialogue that fills the
Right.
blanks, whereas this one there's not much between.
And it's all exposition. Well, it's not all exposition. It's mostly exposition.
It's a lot.
So it's like listening to an...
Every transition is a song.
Yeah.
It's
Every song I've heard from it tells a story. I mean, there's a definite narrative.
And it's great music, and I'm looking forward to seeing the show.
Yeah.
But we're not. That's not what we're talking about.
No, that's a whole other episode that none of us will probably
not
Probably
Yeah.
So most of this, or a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, comes from a book called American Emperor by David O. Stewart.
Okay.
And it's about Aaron Burr. But not everything I'm going to say. So I'm going to give you some background on Aaron Burr, and then I'm going to get into the story that I want to tell about Aaron Burr.
Okay.
All right?
It was a dark and stormy night, and Aaron Burr and I were there.
So,
Aaron Burr and I
Aaron
were
and
having
Burr.
brandy.
so he was born in 1756 in Newark, New Jersey.
He's American. He was born in America.
He was born in America, but he was a British citizen when he was born because
it
it's before the
hadn't happened
revolution.
yet, right?
As one
His
is.
father
Right, as one is,
was the
as we all
second
are.
president of Princeton College in New Jersey.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew he come from money. I didn't know that.
So, but his father and mother died when he was like 2, so he was raised by relatives.
Yeah.
But still in New Jersey. He entered Princeton when he was 13. He graduated when he was 16.
Good God.
He originally was studied theology, but then switched over to law.
Interesting. What an interesting switch there.
So in 1775, he served under Benedict Arnold when Benedict Arnold
Wow.
marched on Quebec.
He's the guy who made the eggs.
I didn't. Right.
Well,
He
this
invented
was
eggs.
before Benedict Arnold became a traitor.
Right.
This was when he was one of Washington's top generals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, is he on the path yet to becoming a traitor?
No.
But we haven't rebelled yet.
We,
so
we, we, well, and
Well, we're right on the cusp, though. It's 1775.
well, we are in rebellion against,
Yeah,
but we
we're
haven't
angry.
declared independence.
Right, but we're angry at that point.
But Lexington and
More angry than anything else.
You're right.
the violent conflict with England began with Lexington and Concord,
Right.
Which was 73, right? 1773.
That
Sure.
sounds right.
So maybe,
The jelly, I don't remember.
Yeah.
What
or maybe that was when the Boston Massacre happened. Maybe that was in 1773. But anyway, we were in violent conflict with England before we declared independence in 1776.
Lexington
Right,
Concord was
right.
75.
75. Okay,
was
so
75.
so 75 is when the war actually started.
What was the massacre? Because that's actually a
That was
fascinating
73
story
then.
on
It
its
was
own.
1780.
Which massacre?
70.
Oh,
the Boston Massacre.
Let me stop you just for a second. Have you seen the John Adams
Yeah.
with
Actually,
HBO?
Paul Giamatti? Yes.
Boston Massacre was 1970.
Oh.
March
Not-
5th, 1970.
1970?
1770.
1770.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was one of those two.
Yeah.
Right.
The world will never
One of
know.
those round, but the Boston Massacre is where John Adams defended
Yeah,
the
the
British
British.
soldier,
Right.
wasn't it? Brilliant.
Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant.
And that's a brilliant miniseries on HBO. I would recommend
I would
watching
recommend
it.
it highly.
But
yeah.
I
back on.
need to move on to Aaron Burr. So anyway, so in 75 we were at war with England, but we hadn't declared our independence.
Right.
And so the Americans were marching on Quebec. They had taken Montreal. They were trying to take Quebec City.
Yeah.
But they lost this invasion. They were repelled, and
Yeah.
they were repelled from Quebec, and then they retreated from Montreal. But Aaron Burr first served in the military under Benedict Arnold during that campaign. In 1776, he joined Washington's staff.
Okay.
For about 2.5, 3 weeks maybe, and then he left
that was
Washington's
it.
staff because he didn't like Washington.
That makes sense. I heard he wasn't likable.
Well, yeah, he had some certain.
He wasn't a very
he had some
personable person.
qualities.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Just like the three of us.
Just like us three.
but so he joined General Israel Putnam's staff, and he was commissioned a lieutenant colonel at the age of 21.
You know who else is a colonel? Not
you,
Ron.
Not Ron.
me.
Ruby Laffoon.
Ruby Laffoon is.
So-
That son of a bitch needs a call.
He was at Valley Forge.
Yeah.
That
was a big one.
He was. He commanded a brigade in 1779 at the Battle of Monmouth.
Okay.
He openly supported Charles Lee, who was reprimanded by Washington for retreating, and who, if you remember the musical Hamilton, there's a duel between some supporter of Washington and it was either Lee or supporter, and Hamilton was like the second for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember. I didn't know I don't know.
Washington was very
I
upset
don't know.
about
Anything. If it
exactly.
wasn't in Assassin's Creed
Defending
3,
Wait
I
a second.
don't know.
So in 1779, he resigned from the army because he was having health problems.
Okay.
And by the
At
fall
21, how old is he?
well, he picked up some disease while he was
not
in
like tuberculosis.
Yeah, that wasn't
something.
tuberculosis, but it was something that he was. So by this time, he's like, what, 22, 23?
Yeah, he's
so,
a kid to me.
Yeah, so then
Probably.
he finishes studying law, and in 1782, well, the revolution's still going on, right?
Right.
But he's out of the army now. He marries the Theodosia Bartow Prevost,
Beautiful song.
Which is my favorite. I think
a
that's my
widow
favorite.
of a British officer. So
Wow.
in 1783, his daughter Theodosia was born.
Yeah.
So this takes us to the end of the Revolution War.
Right.
So then, his wife dies.
What happened?
Well, we won.
I think we won.
Oh, man.
I don't know. I heard we
I
won.
was on the edge of my seat.
So after the British left, after they left New York,
Yeah.
Burr went back to New York City and started practicing law with
There's a young
Hamilton,
man.
Hamilton.
with
Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton.
With
They
Hamilton.
practiced law
Alexander
together.
Hamilton.
They were best bros for a while.
I don't know if they're best
Got
bros,
along
but
perfectly.
they certainly studied law together. In 1789, he was appointed Attorney General for the state of New York.
Rock on.
In 1791, he was elected Senator of New York.
Nobody's arguing that he wasn't a quality human being.
When he when he was elected senator, he defeated Hamilton's father-in-law, Philip Seymour, or Schuyler.
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 So he defeated. Well, it's not. There's no C or K in the spelling of it, but so it's Philip Schuyler.
It's Braille. That's how you can't.
Is it SCHUY?
It's SHUYLER.
Well, how the hell do they pronounce it? Schuyler.
The only reason I know it's Schuyler is because of the musical.
Yeah, that's the
So
only
they always
reason I
say-
know
always say
too.
Schuyler Sisters.
That's not how it's
Okay,
spelled.
and so in 1796 he ran for president. That was the first open. I mean, Washington ran unopposed in the first two elections.
Right.
So in
bet he walked.
1796, Adams won, but it was Adams. But there's a number of people running. He came in fourth.
Adams did, or
No, Adams won.
Burr
Burr came in fourth. Jefferson came in second.
Yeah, I knew Adams did. I was like, how the hell
Became
did
vice
he come in
president.
fourth and become
So
president?
in 1800, he was asked to run on the Republican Democratic ticket. That was the name of Jefferson's
As
party.
opposed to the Whigs, right?
As opposed to
Whigs
the
aren't-
Federalists.
Whigs aren't
around
As opposed to the
Okay.
Federalists. So he played coy about running, and he said he'd only do it if all of the at this point, the way that the president and vice president was elected was whoever got the most votes in the electoral college became president.
Right.
Whoever got the second most votes became vice president.
Right.
And so each elector had 2 votes.
Yeah.
One for, and so, but both of them were for president. They weren't separated in president, vice president.
Right, like it is
And
now.
so he said he would only run if the electorates promised to that after they voted for Jefferson, who was expected to be president, and he was expecting to be vice president, that all the electors would hold fast and vote for him. He didn't want to come in third or fourth.
Right.
So
I really want this.
Guys,
Please.
come on.
So
I'll only run if I'm gonna win.
So the plan in back then was that everybody would vote for the candidate they wanted for president, which would be Jefferson,
Right.
and then all of those same electors, except for one, would vote for the vice president for the Aaron Burr, and then one would choose someone else, so that that the vice president would have one less vote
One
than the
fewer vote,
president.
yeah.
Right.
But because of Burr's being pissy about it, they all voted for him, so we got a tie.
They voted for him because he was pissy about it.
Yes. So
Pussy.
So in 1800, we got a tie between Jefferson and Aaron Burr, who was supposed to be his running mate.
Right.
Now, Burr at first said, well, that he wasn't going to contest the presidency with Jefferson.
Right.
But then someone wrote an op-ed in a newspaper or something saying that he should
probably Thomas Paine.
say that if he was given the presidency, that he wouldn't take it because Jefferson should do it. And he said, well, I'm not going to do that. If I'm offered the presidency, I'm taking the presidency.
Yeah.
Which, of course, didn't endear him to his running mate, Jefferson.
Right.
Well, no. Who would like that?
And so
That's usurpation.
So
right
the
there.
Federalists, because there was a time, went into the House of Representatives. Yeah. Each state got one vote. And you could only become president by getting a majority of states, not by majority of votes.
Right.
So there were, at that point, there were 16 states. So 8 of them voted for Jefferson, 6 of them voted for Burr, and 2 of them abstained from voting because they were equally split between Federalists and Republicans.
Yeah. Wow.
And so they had 34 votes, and no one changed their election. Then they did a 35th. Finally, Hamilton wrote some stuff that incensed Burr, of course, saying some bad things about him. Yeah. And so the Federalists eventually in the 2 states that were abstaining, they abstained from voting, and so those states then went for Jefferson.
Right.
So on the 36th ballot, Jefferson won and Burr became vice president. So.
Right.
So,
which Hamilton made a good point. Jefferson was very vocal about what his beliefs were, and Burr was not.
Yeah.
Well,
because Hamilton didn't like Jefferson at all.
No, Hamilton didn't like Jefferson at all.
But he thought he had integrity.
But he knew what Jefferson stood for.
That's exactly
and he didn't know what Burr stood for, even though he'd known Burr for years.
Well, sure.
So Burr becomes vice president, and Jefferson freezes him out.
Yeah,
of course he's going to freeze him out.
What an asshole to say.
He would. So Burr, of course, doesn't like being frozen out because he's coveting power, shall we say?
Right.
So. Anyway, he only spends 3 or 4 months a year in Washington, D.C. The rest of the time, he's spending back in his home in New York City.
Is that different than normal?
No, I don't think it is.
Well,
he's a
the legislature.
politician.
Well, the legislature was only in session for 3 or 4 months anyway, and his only job was to be president of the Senate.
I mean, you're right. Burr would have been an amazing politician in modern times.
He'd have been great.
Yeah,
he would have been very McConnelly.
He would have been very good at the.
He would have been very McConnelly, wouldn't he?
So anyway,
by great we mean he would be terrible, but he would have been good at the system.
He would have been good at doing what McConnell does. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he would have been very good at the system. So Burr's at the pinnacle of his success, and he was wanting to be president, but now he's being frozen out by Jefferson. He's not getting any of his patronage. He can't appoint anybody because Jefferson doesn't want any of his people around.
Well, no.
So he decides to run, and he knows that Jefferson isn't going to put him on the ticket in 1804 when they've changed the Constitution. So at this point, you're running as president and vice president. You're not running for the top and second slot.
Right.
So he decides, okay, while he's vice president, he runs for governor of New York. And Hamilton disparages him widely.
I would think more so as the governor than he would the vice president. The governor actually has.
Well, he lost to a guy that nobody had ever heard of. But Hamilton went out of his way to say disparaging things about Burr. And so Burr wrote to Hamilton, and this is where our story actually begins. Okay. So Burr writes a letter to Hamilton demanding that he retract what he said, and expecting that he would, because Hamilton in the past, on 2 other occasions, had retracted stuff that he had said that had disparaged Burr's honor, his code of honor.
Okay, yeah.
So, but Hamilton, instead of retracting what he said, started getting picayune about the specific language that he supposedly said, and that, well, how could you say that? If I didn't say this word, how do you know that it means this? And yada yada yada. It's like, what is the definition of is?
It's almost a fight between schoolboys. It's like
so
a petty.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So this went back and forth like 20 times, and all of this is leading up to the duel. So they finally they can't come to. No one will back down.
Right.
And so they decide that they're gonna have to do this duel thing.
Right.
I don't think either one of them necessarily wanted a duel, but both of them were so proud that they. So now in New York, dueling was against the law, and those who dueled, it was a capital punishment. You kill someone in a duel, you can be hung.
Yeah.
They'll hang you.
Okay.
Now in New Jersey, it was against the law, but it wasn't a capital crime. They weren't going to hang you if you killed someone. Right. So Burr lived in Lower Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
He had his mansion down near Wall Street. And so on the morning of the duel, while it's still dark, he and his second and another guy, they crossed the Hudson River over to Weehawken, to the cliffs of Weehawken, New Jersey.
Okay.
And so the duel, and then Hamilton joins them later. And so there's this cliff they climb up from the river to this cliff.
Yeah.
And they have this duel where, there's two shots. No one can confirm who fired first.
Yeah.
Hamilton had written in a couple of letters that he didn't intend to fire at Burr.
Yeah, just shoot into the air, I believe.
That's what the musical says.
But there's no evidence that for sure that he did that and that he didn't just miss.
As one would with a musket.
Well, they were Hamilton's muskets. And so Burr shoots him. Hamilton's mortally wounded, so Burr is whisked back to his house in New York.
Right.
Then Hamilton is carried back to New York and with the doctor that was there. And so Hamilton then dies.
Right.
Well, it takes them like 9-10 days to start an inquiry into this duel.
How this random bullet ended up in Hamilton?
Right.
Well, they knew it was a duel. The seconds were kind of brought in and eventually held. But it's like, Hamilton dies, and it takes them all this time for the machinery of justice to start actually inquiring about this. And so Burr flees. He's indicted. He's eventually indicted for murder in New York, and later on he's indicted for murder in New Jersey. But at first it's just New York that indicts him for murder. So he flees to a friend in New Jersey, and from there he flees to Philadelphia because each state. So by the time he's indicted in New Jersey, New Jersey and New York have these warrants out for him, but no one is trying to extradite him from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Then he goes back to work in Washington.
What?
He's still vice president of the United States.
But everybody knows what he did. He's got warrants against him.
So everybody knows what he did.
Okay.
And there are people who support him, because they would have dueled in the same circumstances as him. Even though it's illegal some places, it's not illegal everywhere, and it's a code of honor kind of thing.
It's a gentleman's thing.
So he goes back to Washington, D.C., and in some circles, he's a hero because, a lot of people hated Hamilton in the first place.
Right.
But also, a lot of people, they liked him for his dueling. But he knows that his political career is over. Mm-hmm. and he has a lot of political ambitions. So the last thing that happens while he's vice president, or that he's really a part of, is this Jefferson, when the Republican Democrats took over the federal government after they beat Adams and Jefferson became vice president.
Yeah.
One of Jefferson's thing was he didn't like the fact that he felt that the Federalists, when they were in power, had stacked all the judiciary with their judges.
Yeah.
So they passed a law that did away with most of the lower court judges so that they could get rid of these judges because it's lifetime appointments, so you can't fire them.
Again, it's nice that we don't have these issues anymore.
So you do away with the courts themselves, but he couldn't do that with every court, such as the Supreme Court.
Right.
So he got the House of Representatives to impeach one of the Supreme Court justices because he felt that the guy was too political.
Wow.
So Burr presided over the trial of this judge in the Senate. And, Burr, everybody who has anything to say about this thing says that Burr was fair and even-handed about the whole thing, and the judge wasn't convicted. In fact, he got more votes saying that he wasn't guilty than he was, even though the Republicans controlled the Senate.
Yeah.
Jefferson didn't like that. So while all this is going on, Burr starts making plans about his future. Mm-hmm. So he has no future in Washington.
Right.
He's alienated everybody that could possibly be of advantage of his political advancement.
Right.
So he decides that what he needs to do is start a war with Spain.
That's brilliant.
That's how I try to solve most of my problems.
That's what usually I tried to start one last week.
Yeah, how'd it go?
Well, they didn't pay attention.
I'm building my armada, but it's a slow process.
That's a good idea, but the Spanish fleet's tough. You got to watch those guys. Yeah.
So he actually had a multitude of plans, but they involved invading Florida because Florida was still Spain.
I'm still in favor of invading Florida.
Now,
I am too.
Jeff, you should invade Florida in a couple weeks.
You're there. You're there in a couple weeks. Take it from Cocoa Beach and Vero Beach.
Well,
plant your flag. Put a wild card
the
flag.
Louisiana Purchase had already been made, so we had gained that territory from France.
Right.
So we had New Orleans. We had and so we had all this wilderness territory, but the Spanish, but Florida wasn't part of that, and Florida at that point also was the coastal parts of Mississippi and Alabama.
Right. Let's lay down what the Louisiana Purchase was, though, because I don't think people understand how vast it was. It wasn't just Louisiana. It's everything west of the Mississippi.
It's everything west of the Mississippi. Well, it actually was everything west of the Mississippi to
north of Texas.
North of Texas.
Right.
It wasn't all the way to the west coast. It
got close to the Rockies.
Yeah, it got to the Rockies.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It left out Utah and Nevada.
It didn't go that far.
Right.
But almost everything that we consider Midwest.
Yeah. That was the Louisiana Purchase.
Right. So Burr came up with this master plan of.
Master plans always go well.
Oh, absolutely.
Master plans. So his master plan was that through his ingenuity, he was going to separate the western states west of Appalachia from the United States. They would become their own country. They would also, as part of this, they would invade Mexico and take Mexico, and they would invade and start a war with Spain and take the Floridas, and all of that becoming a new empire under the rule, the kingship or the presidency of Aaron Burr.
That's creepy. That's like a dictatorial.
The title of this book was Emperor, and now it makes sense because he's literally starting a world war.
He was an imperialist, only with him in the position of power, though.
Well, he also was kind of loyal to Britain for a while, you could tell. But he's building a new Europe. We had the United States, and he's trying to disunite it to form a new country.
Right. You want to say secede, but it's too early to even use the word
well, no,
secede.
actually, it's not because when the Federalists lost in 1800 to Jefferson, New England, there's a lot of talk in New England of seceding from the South. Because there's all this regional jealousy between the North and the South.
Well, the cultures were so vastly different.
I've seen 1776.
Oh yeah.
And when it was those things were mentioned to Jefferson, he said, "Well, people, if they want to secede, that's their choice. Why would it bother us one way or the other?"
He's a states' right kind of guy.
Right, he's a states' right kind of guy. So Aaron Burr, as one does when they're plotting, starts telling everybody about his plans.
Of course, that's how you make it happen.
Billboards, just billboards everywhere.
So one of his first contacts is this guy he knew from the Revolutionary War, this Scottish guy, and
William Wallace.
McClellan.
No.
William Wallace.
Anyway, I forget the guy's name.
It was William Wallace.
But he has him meet with the British ambassador and talking about trying to get the British to commit gunboats to blockade the mouth of New Orleans to stop American shipping. So when his plan went into action, so that they could seize New Orleans as part of his master plan of
holy shit, that is for real.
He's trying to use Britain
sedition.
That is it's treason as of this moment.
Yes. So they talk with the British ambassador, and then his friend goes to Europe to try to meet with King George. And the British ambassador actually likes this idea and writes a letter of support to it. But it takes 6 months for that boat to leave, for his message to go back to England. So after he is no longer vice president, he's starting to try and pull all these pieces together. So the first thing he does is he takes a trip down the Ohio to the Mississippi and down to New Orleans because he wants to meet the people in the West, talk with them. Foment revolution. Find out who's going to be your find out who's going to be on his side.
Right.
And so he takes this riverboat trip.
Big river.
Big river.
That's what that music was about, right?
Yes, that is exactly what it's about.
So anyway, so he while he's going down the Ohio River, he's on this flat boat or on this houseboat. He has this houseboat is built. Now,
Right.
Aaron Burr his mansion and all of his possessions were seized in New York.
Yeah, he can't go home.
He has no money,
No.
so but he keeps finding money, getting people to give him money so that he can keep doing
He
this
was
stuff.
a great speaker. He was,
Yeah.
I mean, his son-in-law was rich, but he had this ability to talk anybody or a good portion of the people that he'd meet, talk
Yeah.
them into whatever he wanted them to be doing. And people said, contemporaries of his said that, when you're talking to him and you'd feel like he was wholeheartedly supported your position, then you'd go home and think about it and realize that he hadn't
didn't
said
say anything.
anything,
Yeah, he didn't say anything.
that you had no idea what he actually thought.
But he had a ton of charisma. He was
Right.
a very charismatic guy.
So while he's going down the river, there's an island between. At this point, West Virginia is still part of Virginia.
Yeah.
So there's an island between West Virginia and Ohio that this rich Irish gentleman had settled by the name of Blennerhaus. Blennerhassett. It's Blennerhassett.
Blenner has it.
Who's got it?
Who was married to one of his nieces.
That's weird.
It happens.
So
Doesn't?
She's a lovely girl.
So Burr is floating down the Ohio River.
Thinking about life and
Well,
whatnot.
he's stopping
Sure.
and talking with and everywhere he goes,
His servants.
everywhere he goes and he gets off his boat and talks to people, people are excited to see him because it's the vice president of the United States,
Right,
or former
it's
vice
right.
president.
Yeah.
He's important.
He's important. People knew his
And he came
name.
to see us.
Right.
And so he's going past this island and he sees Blennerhassett on he sees this house, this mansion on this island. He sees Blennerhassett on the shore and he's waving at him and he waves back. So he turns his boat back and he comes and stops at this island. And he recruits Blennerhassett into his scheme.
This wealthy
Irishman.
The beautiful house.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Now at this
Big
point,
house.
now at this point, he's still selling ideas. He hasn't actually started putting the plans in motion. He's trying to find out who he can bring to his side and who he can. So he and Blennerhassett spent some quality time together. Then he goes on his way and he goes down the Mississippi. He comes into Kentucky. There's all kinds of people in Kentucky that he
been there.
meets.
Yeah, nobody there would fall for his tricks.
So a Virginia politician, this is a quote from the book, a Virginia politician referred to Kentucky as Virginia's Botany Bay. Botany Bay in Australia was settled by British convicts. A visitor to Kentucky found that wealthier citizens were immersed in infidelity and dissipation, gathering in crowds for horse races. The lower classes, he reported, were downright fanatics and zealots in religion. Kentucky settlers, according to one of them, were illiterate and all were poor or in moderate circumstances.
I just found a picture of Harmon Blennerhassett.
Yeah,
I
that's
just want
him.
to point out this is Severus Snape.
I was thinking he looks like Grip Hook.
Okay.
He looks like one of the goblins.
He definitely
yeah.
speaks gobbledygook.
Oh yeah, he's a gobbledygook
That's why he
master.
listens to the podcast.
Right. He teaches it at IU.
So as he's going down, he meets people in Kentucky. Kentucky becomes a big central point in a place, a recruiting place for it, because it was part of the West at this point.
Yeah.
All right, so he meets this with this guy named Wilkerson. Wilkerson at this point was a general. He was the head of the American Army. Wilkerson,
The whole head of the
American Army, which numbered 3,300 men.
Wow.
Because Jefferson, one of the first things he did when he became president was he disbanded most of the army because he didn't trust armies.
Well, Burr was laughable until now.
Yeah.
When he has control of the entire American army.
Well,
Give me again, what year are we in right now?
we are in 1805.
Okay, so
1805.
because I was thinking like Lewis and Clark are heading out west
Yep.
at this time. They're disembarking and heading through Kentucky and heading out west. So
Yeah. So Wilkerson had done Rick Wilkerson had been in the military. He left the military. So here's a quote about Wilkerson from the book.
okay,
So he's this, and there he said that means he was staying with Wilkerson, and there. So Wilkerson rose to overall command of the army in February 1797. Even though prominent Americans had long suspected that he was a Spanish agent. In 1797,
Okay.
an unequivocal accusation came from the surveyor who was charting the boundary between Mississippi Territory and Spanish West Florida. The surveyor reported to the Secretary of State that Wilkerson aimed to detach the states of Kentucky and Tennessee from the Union and place them under the protection of Spain. He recorded Spanish payments to Wilkerson and provided one of the ciphers or codes Wilkerson used to correspond with Spanish officials. President Adams, this is Wilkerson's history before Burr meets him.
Yeah.
President Adams dismissed the accusation. He had heard that Wilkerson owed loyalties to Spain, Adams wrote to the general, but scarcely any man arrives from the West who does not bring the same report along with him.
Everyone's trying
Everybody
to.
loves the Spain.
Everyone's trying to give countries to
So,
Spain.
you
It's
know,
fine.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
The president is given a report about the treason of his top general.
Here's
And,
direct
well,
evidence.
what are
He's
you
like,
gonna do?
What are you going to do about it? Yeah, what can you do?
It's just Spain. It's Ferdinand.
No one's afraid of Spain anymore.
Leave Ferdinand alone. He's a friend. He's a friend.
So,
That's all I'm saying.
so Burr and Wilkerson becomes this major
Conspirator.
person, this major conspirator in the whole thing. So he and Wilkerson spent a long time together devising the plans, and Burr talking with Wilkerson about having him taking command of the army, bringing it to
God.
New Orleans and to invade Mexico City, and Wilkerson, he's an opportunist guy.
Sure.
He's on the payroll of Spain. He's getting like $1,000 a month from Spain.
He's
Wow.
getting money from Spain, but he's talking to Burr about capturing Mexico.
Exactly.
What a fuck.
Well,
But with the idea of,
It's just so
well,
opportunistic and ugly.
but that's the thing about both of them. I mean, Wilkerson, at the same time, he's telling Spain that the Americans are planning to invade.
He's a double agent. He's playing both sides.
They're both using each other.
Right.
But Burr doesn't realize that Wilkerson is going. Well, Wilkerson at this point isn't selling him out necessarily.
Right.
Wilkerson is just doing
Hearing
what
him
Wilkerson
out.
does.
So pretty much what we've got is two con men going at each other,
Yeah.
playing each other.
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
And that's exactly what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
2 years from now, the pack is what we're done about it.
Oh, I hope so. I'm there.
All right,
I'm
so
Andre.
he talks with a lot of people. He tries to bring in Andrew Jackson in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Into his
Yeah,
plot.
who would never betray his own
But
people.
he doesn't tell Jackson that he's going to separate the Western states from Washington. He's just talking to Jackson about invading Mexico or the Floridas. And Jackson's all for that.
He's
Jackson,
just firing guns in the air.
Jackson's
Jackson right
all for invading countries and stealing their land.
Killing brown people, yes, sir.
And he was the general of the Tennessee militia, and he had
Right.
several thousand men that he could call to arms at Burr's
Probably just sitting in
notice.
his lawn, like waiting.
Probably
to
at
go.
the Hermitage. Come to the Hermitage.
So Burr is so everywhere he goes, he's finding out what are the grievances of the people here that will bring them around to my cause, and which part of my cause can I tell them about without telling them about the parts that might make them not want to join.
Right.
He's pulling strings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So he gets to New Orleans, and and everywhere he goes, people are throwing balls and banquets and parties.
Yeah,
and
they love him.
He's
It's
being
just
celebrated.
high society.
And the farther west he goes, the more people like him for the duel, as opposed to question
makes
his
sense.
morality for the duel.
Well, was it because
South.
Hamilton wanted that big central
It's
government?
because of this whole honor code thing where,
Okay.
someone bespeeches your honor, of course you're going to shoot him.
So it had nothing to do with political beliefs. They just love him because he shot a guy.
So in
That's
New
fair.
Orleans,
Yeah, that's fair.
In New Orleans, there's this group of people that were part of this Mexican American society, but they weren't Mexicans. They were Americans who wanted to invade Mexico.
Right.
And so he makes big inroads with them. And so
Also good that we don't have this problem today. So,
No, absolutely not. Imperialism or
Dislike of Mexico.
or a dislike of Mexico. People in Louisiana being shifty, that doesn't happen.
so
Not
Sadiq's
anymore.
from Mexico.
Is he really? Sadiq's from
That's it,
Mexico?
Mexico.
He's from Louisiana.
Louisiana is what I meant to say.
I didn't say they didn't have good folks there.
So-
they have at least one.
Yeah.
So anyway, he on this initial trips, he meets lots of people. He brings a lot of people into his scheme, and then he goes back to Washington D.C. and Philadelphia to finish gathering money and do
Right.
some more scheming.
To finish the screw job that he's begun now. Yeah.
And so at this point, they start talking to the ambassador from Spain.
Okay.
Wow.
That makes sense to get him involved in this.
Oh yeah. Let's just,
and they're trying to get him to fund it.
he wants to fund the invasion of Mexico,
No.
but he's not telling
And,
them.
Florida.
But no, they're
Right.
not telling him about that part of the plan.
Right.
They want him to fund the revolution to separate,
the United
to split
States.
the United States, the western part, and the western territories from the 13 colonies or states on the Atlantic coast.
Convincing him that it's in Mexico's or Spain's best interest
Right.
to do so.
And
guy.
apparently he thought it was a good idea and gave him some money.
Holy shit.
Burr he's a salesman.
He's a carpetbagger from the
So-
day, man.
Of course, he wrote back reports to his back to Spain, but at this point, Spain was also not the power it had once been.
No, they took such a hit in Barbados, in the Caribbean at that time, because they were siege. Every country was against Spain.
Well, also the British sunk the Spanish Armada, and then they didn't have the sea power anymore. But anyway,
No, Walter Raleigh, I think. Sir Walter Raleigh.
so
Privateer.
so
Sir Ian McKellen.
Sir Ian McClellan. The Three Musketeers did it.
so at this time, at this same time, Burr is having he must be having second thoughts about what his plans are.
What? He did all this crazy shit already.
Because he goes and meets with Jefferson.
Hey, buddy. How
Okay,
you
yeah,
doing?
hey, buddy. I
and
know
he's-
you like the French.
I know you like having United States, but
Right.
what if, just hear me out on this.
Hear me out.
What if we didn't?
He goes to Jefferson, and he tries to talk Jefferson into giving him an important appointment someplace. And if Jefferson doesn't, he threatens him, saying, "I can do you real damage."
Why would Jefferson do anything for Burr at this point? Though?
Which was Jefferson's
outside of
response.
Burr is so
Kick him out.
scary and threatening.
Right.
He killed a guy once.
Which
Remember
was-
the time he
yeah,
killed a
you
guy?
remember
Jefferson's
when he killed
response was,
Hamilton,
no.
who was big and scary. You remember that?
Yeah.
That's like killing the biggest nerd in school and then
Oh.
going, "I killed a guy."
We've all been
So,
there.
Oh yeah.
So-
you survived it though, so congratulations.
I was the second biggest nerd, not the biggest.
Right. You were lucky, pal.
I made it out to the other side.
so Burr, he's running out of options. He's going to have to follow through on his plan or not follow through on his plan.
Right.
And he's going to try and follow through on his plan because his main goal isn't necessarily invading Mexico or the Floridas or even separating the United States. It's his own personal aggrandizement is what
Right.
he's really after. And he will do anything that will support that.
But at this point, he's put in so much work to get all these people. He can't tell these people, "Well, I'm going to back out of this treasonous plan."
So-
now, he's gotten so many people involved at this point.
So exactly, and so his original dates are they're pushed back because it takes time to organize all this treasonous
a
stuff.
coup, right?
So, well, here's the thing: he actually told one of the people he was trying to get to join his scheme that he planned to do a coup against the United States government, seize the government, seize the boats and guns and the money from the banks in Washington, D.C., and then sail to New Orleans.
Huh.
He's telling people this?
He's telling
He's
people
just
this.
That's not the
telling
same thing
people-
as splitting. That's conquering. the
Yeah,
United
that's
States.
conquering. That's imperialism. Again.
So one of these people that he tells this to, doesn't want anything to do with it,
Yeah.
and goes and tells Jefferson, who does nothing.
I'm shocked that nobody had done anything
Yeah.
up until this point and said, "Burr's trying to screw you," and it surprised me not that Jefferson said, "All right, whatever."
Things start getting
Right, it's
Burr
Burr.
never does anything
Things
very
are getting
successfully.
published. By this point, things are starting to get published in newspapers about Burr's plans. These reports are getting back to Jefferson, and Jefferson's response is,
Is it because he doesn't care? Or is it because Jefferson was kind of a docile guy?
It's because he didn't think Burr was going to actually do any of it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I believe. I think he thought Burr was all hot air, and so
Right.
this is just Burr talking
Well,
bullshit.
Jefferson's always, to me, portrayed as kind of a laid back.
Well,
He
he could
what
be
are you
a
gonna
dick.
do? Let's go to, yeah, but he was in
But
France getting blowjobs so much.
Epic rap battles.
Absolutely.
well, it's true.
Between
cabinet
him and
meetings.
who? Adams or who was it?
Oh, Hamilton. Did it go at it?
Jefferson and Hamilton?
Yeah,
oh,
I mean,
that's
yeah.
the big thing. Yeah.
Anyway,
that
Cap-
was
the cabinet
fun.
meetings.
That
Back-
was
back
fun.
to my
Cabinet
story.
meetings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the important
Back to
stuff.
the other rap battles.
Right.
So Burr puts his plans in motion. Now it's 1806. It's the fall going into the winter of 1806, and they kind of have a deadline to do this before the Mississippi drops so low that they can't move boats down it
No, that
to
makes
New
sense,
Orleans. Because New Orleans is central to their plan. Their plan is still to seize New Orleans.
Well, if you got
yeah.
if you have the port of New Orleans, you've seized the entire southern section of America from shipping and trading.
And you've got a route to get
Anywhere else into Middle America.
By this point, it's become clear to Burr that the British are not going to send him any gunboats. And so he is trying to get other boats. And so part of his invasion plan is he's having these boats built for him in Marietta, I think, Ohio.
Okay.
But it's
In
on
Marietta, Ohio.
Marietta.
On the Ohio
They're
River.
on the Ohio River. And they're supposed to be, the staging area is supposed to be Blennerhassett Island.
Blennerhassett Island. That's where it's all coming down.
That's where the staging area is, and then these people are supposed to meet him further down the Mississippi later on.
Right.
So the initial plan was there'd be like 15, 20 boats, and there'd be like 1,000 men meeting at Blennerhassett Island.
Yeah.
There were 11
Great.
men.
That is a slightly different number.
Yeah.
So 11 men show up.
One of them just thought they were going to be cupcakes. He's like,
Right,
I thought there were snacks
In
involved.
which, to my understanding, there was a cookout.
Well, by this time, there's so much stuff being reported that a lot of people are starting to have second thoughts about
Right.
joining this.
About treason? That's something worth giving second thoughts
I imagine it's like Raisin in the Sun, where the main character is like, "This is my dream," and people go, "You're an idiot. That's the dumbest dream." So when people go, "Burr, me and Burr are going to do this," people go, "You're fucking stupid. Yeah,
Sure.
you're a
Have fun with
moron."
that.
Okay, go ahead. Have fun
with your
Have fun
revolution.
sieging America.
Yeah.
That's great.
He's in the castle.
So he writes some cipher letters to Wilkerson and sends a couple people ahead with those.
Yeah.
Now,
Just said be sure to drink.
and
Right.
there's another group of people that do end up meeting with the people on Blennerhassett Island who brings like 60 recruits, and I forget their names off the top of my head, but one of the names of one of the key names of one of his supporters, and I remember this, and because I wanted to tell you because I thought you'd enjoy this name, is Comfort Tyler.
Yep.
Comfort Tyler.
Absolutely.
If I had known Comfort was a name, that would be my son's name right now.
Comfort
God
Tyler.
Damn it. That's great.
So anyway,
It soothes me just to hear it.
so
I'm thinking like Tyler is Tyler, but also I'm thinking like what a roofer that would be.
Yeah.
So Jefferson's
Comfort Tyler.
getting all these reports about what's going on, and it reaches this point where he decides he has to do something.
Yeah.
So what he does is he sends an agent to follow Burr's trail and report back what's happening. That's what he's doing.
Right.
So he sends this guy down, and so the person he picks, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head at this point because I'm not actually looking at any of my notes.
Willie Tyler and Lester.
No, it wasn't. But anyway, he convinces the governor of Ohio that he should call out the militia and stop these guys at Blennerhassett Island.
And we love Ohio politicians.
Yes, we do.
Especially Republicans.
But it's a different party. That's not the same Republicans.
Right,
but
right.
It's always a party in Ohio.
it is Ohio.
That's what they say.
It's Ohio.
That's their logo.
So the militia does come out in Ohio to stop them at Blennerhassett Island. So they flee from that island just in time.
All 70 people.
All 70 of them in their boats.
A naval siege in America. That's brilliant.
I imagine one guy just standing on the front with like a sword, like a saber pointed as they're like going, and people on the banks being like, "What are these?
What are these idiots
Where are they
doing?"
going?
It's like a KKK parade in Connecticut or something like that, where you're like, "What are those two idiots up to?"
So
Gary, is that you?
Right, Gary? Take that hood off. I can't see you.
So by this time, Wilkerson has had complete second thoughts. He doesn't want anything to do with it.
Well, yeah.
But he has to cover his own ass, right? Because
damn.
he's written so many letters back and forth between him and Burr that, if Burr is caught, he can.
They're all caught,
If Burr hangs, he hangs.
Oh, yeah.
So he has to make it look like he's not part of this. So Burr had sent a couple cipher letters to him, urging him to put his part of the plan into motion.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, he arrested the guys who brought the cipher.
Excellent.
No.
He translated the cipher and then erased parts of it that implicated him.
Right.
And then he sent it back to Jefferson.
Look at this.
Look,
That's crazy.
Tom.
At which point Jefferson was forced to actually start doing stuff.
But imagine that. How badly, how horrible is your plan that you have the entirety of the United States Armed Forces
and
you still
lose.
fuck the whole thing up? Right.
So Wilkerson then goes to New Orleans and declares martial law.
Well, I mean, you know.
Well, he does it to round up all of Burr's accomplices.
He has to make it look like
So-
he's putting an effort in here.
Well, he declares martial law, but the governor of the territory doesn't do it. So it's
We don't declare
It's
martial
not
law.
actual martial law. He tries to. There's a couple people that he arrests that the grand jury in New Orleans sets free because he doesn't have an arrest warrant, and so he seizes them anyway and sets them on a boat and sends them back to Washington D.C.
Oh my God, that's great.
When you got the army, you kind of have the power.
So
I love a governor that goes, "The hell you think you're doing? What are you doing? Get the fuck out of here!"
And so Wilkerson's like, and Jefferson's at this point. Jefferson's all behind this. What Wilkerson's doing?
Well, yeah,
because he wants. At this point, he's kind of alarmed at what
it's finally gone too far now.
He's alarmed at what Burr's doing, so he's all behind Wilkerson doing all this extra legal stuff to stop this coup.
Honestly, though, would you take it seriously if you were Jefferson and you'd be like, "What is that idiot doing?" No, no, this will never work.
So eventually, and Burr is slowed down on his trip south because he's sued he's brought to court twice in Kentucky by the
Go Kentucky, get him.
Yeah, get him.
by the U.S. Attorney Davies, who knows that he's plotting treason.
Right.
He brings him before the grand jury, and they let him loose on lack of evidence. So he does it again,
geez.
and he's released again. But it eats up like 3 or 4 weeks of Burr's precious time.
Well, yeah,
And
he's
Davies,
a menace, though.
and at this point, and this is before Wilkerson had seized New Orleans, Davies keeps sending reports back to Jefferson, and one of them he says, "I'm going to keep sending you reports, even though I know you're not going to do a fucking thing about it." He doesn't say fuck.
Sure, but
he doesn't say that. He said, "Even though I know you're not going to do anything about it."
I'm sure the tone was there, where it's
But
like,
you know what?
"Okay,
I'm
Tom."
here. I'll defend the United States if no one else is going to do it.
Right,
I will,
right. If you're not going to do it, Mr. President,
I'll take care of this trade myself. Hold my beer.
So eventually, Burr gets down to Mississippi territory, and he learns that Wilkerson has betrayed him, and a lot of his people are. He has no
authority to call treason on this.
He keeps picking up people along the way, and by the time he gets to Mississippi, he has about 100 guys.
100 guys.
He has about 100 guys.
Cletus.
That's what I'm wondering. Cletus or Jebediah,
And-
Levi.
But he has been able to pick up arms along the way, and at one place he talks the commander of the fort to join him along with like 10 of his soldiers.
I just imagine though that they're sitting on the side of the river, just mind their business, like whittling some sticks, and he's like, "Hey, you guys wanna?"
Yeah.
All right.
I see a bunch of pitchforks, like crude wooden pitchforks.
Well, it's December now, and there's snow, and it's the river. You can't move it. It's like it's become miserable for everybody involved.
And you've got a bunch of idiots who are on a full.
So by this time, Jefferson has made a proclamation and urging people to stop Burr and to put him to arrest him, and so he gets arrested. He eventually gets arrested, and he. he goes on trial in Mississippi territory, and the first trial, I believe, he is acquitted or something like that on lack of evidence.
Okay, how is there lack of evidence
then-
at this point, though?
Can't Jefferson just bring in a giant stack of letters where everyone has been reporting this to him?
Well, we're gonna get into that's why I want to get to the actual trial in Washington D.C. So, but anyway, so the reason he's acquitted is because there's 2 judges over this. One of them is one of Burr's plotters. One of his friends.
I really don't think he did it. He's not a bad guy. If you just listen to his ideas.
And the other one is totally on Jefferson's side. So there's no unanimity between these 2 judges. And so
why would you
it's postponed.
Well, that's so weird, isn't it?
And so it was thrown out, but he was still being. Another trial was going to happen, and so Burr flees. So once he flees, people say, "Okay, well, now this guy's guilty."
A guilty person runs.
He is eventually captured, and he's taken back to by land. He is taken back to Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
And for some reason, at this point, it wasn't. You couldn't just be tried in federal court. You had to be tried for crimes taking place in that specific state. So you had.
So he's got a tour.
So he's got to be. They can only try him in Virginia on crimes that were done in Virginia,
right.
Even though his crimes are kind of against the entire country.
Yeah, it's like a federal crime.
So they can't try him on the stuff that he did in Mississippi or New Orleans. Why don't they just send him back
to New York where he murdered a guy?
Good question.
That is a fine question.
You think that warrants out. So at this point, okay, so the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is now the judge over his trial.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Warren.
Yeah.
Chief Justice Warren, who has a grudge match with Jefferson going on.
Right.
Oh, great.
Jesus Christ.
It's a good thing politics never gets in the way of politics.
Right.
So at his trial, the prosecutors wanted to bring in all this evidence that they collected that from all these other territories. Yeah. Warren limited it to only what they could prove, whether or not it had anything to do, because he was indicted under treason charges, and so anything that wasn't related to that, he wouldn't allow into evidence. Anything that was committed someplace else other than Virginia, since the trial was taking place in Virginia, he wouldn't allow, which is like 90% of their evidence.
Yeah. Right.
So they were forced to try and make Blennerhassett Island the location where treason was taking place. Right. But because of all the evidence from Blennerhassett Island just shows that you have a whole bunch of guys there who don't know what the fuck they're doing. Right. And there were never any weapons of war. So, and Burr was one of the lawyers defending himself. You know, so you have Burr and you have... And you have some other lawyers, and they totally outmatch the federal government, the prosecutors.
Well, it doesn't sound like the federal government is really prepared for.
Well, they're not,
and so much, at all.
For some odd reason, Marshall allows the lawyers to argue for days and days over a single point. You know, and each lawyer there's 6 different lawyers. So like, there's one lawyer, Marshall, who spends 3 days arguing one point about whether or not a piece of evidence should be allowed into court. Shit. So eventually, as things go, Burr is acquitted. The jury says that there wasn't enough evidence to convict him, so we're going to have to say he's not guilty, even though it's clear they thought he was guilty. There was evidence.
Well, sure, but you couldn't do the evidence the only evidence that exists in Virginia.
So then he was tried on. They tried him again because Jefferson wanted this guy.
Oh.
So they tried him again, and this time he was tried on breaking. There's a law against America was. It was neutral in all these European wars and other places.
Skirmishes,
So he was charged with breaking the Neutrality Act or neutrality law. And so, but again, through procedures and stuff like that, he got off the charge. He slips through. So then they decide, well, now we're going to take him to Mississippi or Ohio or to some of these western states where he could overtly, because he wasn't on Blennerhassett Island when all this stuff was taking place. That's one of the reasons they couldn't convict him there. So, but he was in Mississippi. He was in Kentucky. Oh, so we're going to...
He marched to New Orleans with an army.
We'll take him... Well, he wanted to.
Army of 4 people.
By army, I mean these guys.
Their plan was to take him out west and try him again. Yeah. So he went to England.
What?
He went to England and stayed there for a number of years.
Well, yeah, didn't he send somebody to King George and say, "Hey, we got this crazy plan going on"? And
well, he went to England. He went to England and tried to get the plan going again, and no one would give him.
By that point, he's the crazy guy that sits in the bar going, "I used to run America."
England had tried once and didn't go so well.
Right. No, I'm afraid we don't mess with Americans anymore. It's dangerous for everyone.
Well, this was before the War of 1812.
They'll destroy themselves. Just keep giving them ropes.
At this time, we're starting to lead up to the War of 1812, though.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so to make the rest of to shorten the rest of the story.
Yeah.
As I've been doing all the way along.
Yeah. Are we going to after Britain or no. Is he's still living in Britain right now?
So he made it to Britain. Britain eventually tells him he has to leave.
I'm sorry, old chap. You're so obnoxious. We don't want you here to be totally blunt.
But Spain is lovely.
Spain is lovely, and they'll have you.
He goes to Switzerland, and then he tours the continent still.
Well, he's got nowhere else to go. Nobody wants him anymore.
No money, and yet somehow he managed to get money from people to keep living.
Man, carpetbagger. He's great.
So eventually, he comes back to the United States. By this point, the charges have gone away.
Well, everybody forgot what he did by this point, haven't they?
In New York, the charges were dropped. The murder charges were eventually dropped.
Sure. What are we talking, 20 years or so? How long has it been?
I forget, but it's been a while.
It's been a while. Enough for, what do you call it, statutes of limitations. Yeah.
And in New Jersey, the murder charges were dropped because Hamilton had died in New York.
Right.
Even
it's
though
not a problem anymore.
He was shot in New Jersey, but he died in New York.
No, he died in New York. He didn't die in New Jersey. Take him. You have it. It's your deal.
Plus, the governor of New Jersey was a relative.
And don't get off the turnpike. It's dangerous.
Plus, he was a relative of Burr. Right. Burr has all these friends and relatives all over the place. So he eventually comes back to the United States and dies.
Burr does?
Of old age. As one does.
And isn't it insane that he died of old age? Like, he shucked and jived for so many years.
He was formally convicted of being a traitor.
No. Or of murder.
Anything.
Or of anything.
You would have think during that time he would have pissed somebody off so bad they would have just killed him.
He pissed off all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Leonard Hassett eventually hated his guts because, Leonard Hassett, he kept sending all these bills to Leonard Hassett for paying for his excursion, and then, he couldn't pay for him, so Leonard Hassett had all these creditors tracking him all over the world.
Holy shit.
All over the place.
So Burr said, this Irish guy is going to pay all of my bills for me.
Well, him and this other guy, this guy named Ogden, he said he kept buying things in the name and sending the bill to Ogden.
He really was a con man, wasn't he? Yeah.
What a story.
So, I know.
I'd never heard that.
Well, the musical Hamilton makes him sound like a sympathetic villain.
Especially at the end, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I feel for Burr.
And
you figure with his background, being Princeton, graduating from Princeton at 16 or whatever, he was a quality human being. But what a fuck.
Well, the thing is,
what a dick.
He
don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. He was a very accomplished politician in the sense that a politician can get people to do things.
Yeah.
That's what politicians do. They get people to vote for them. They convince people to support bills or to build projects. And he was very good at that. But his real goal was his own self-aggrandizement.
And that's the problem. His ego got in the way of him being successful. It was so clear the United
States meant nothing to him.
Yeah.
Right.
Just as a platform.
And imagine how much good he could have done for the United States had he done everything on the up and up and put his ego aside.
Well, I think, to Burr's way of thinking, he was all for freedom in the United States and all that stuff.
Sure.
But once it was no longer a path for him to fulfill his own personal destiny, whatever that might be, then he would follow the path of his own personal destiny, come hell or high water, whatever happened to anybody else or anything else. And so his own loyalty was his own personal loyalty was to himself and his own honor and his own ego, and not the United States, which is kind of what Hamilton's charges were against him when he was saying, don't vote for this guy for president. Don't vote for this guy for governor.
Yeah.
He doesn't say what he's for. He doesn't stand for anything but he'll risk everything in pursuit of himself.
Yeah.
And it's clear that he was willing to risk everything in pursuit of his own selfish aggrandizement.
Well, he wanted to make himself emperor of the United States. It's bizarre. And he could have done so much otherwise if he had done things correctly.
Well, that's
if he
the
had
thing.
Done things right.
Or even imagine if Wilkinson wasn't in the pocket of the Spanish.
Right.
Imagine if he really was on board with what Burr wanted, how differently the country might have turned out.
That's the only time that I was horrified and felt like this plan could be violent and scary is when he had Wilkinson on his side.
Well, and the thing with because Wilkinson was brought back to testify in his trials, and all of Wilkinson's Spanish treason was coming out to light, making him a very uncredible witness.
Yeah.
And the fact that he had changed the letter that he sent back made him uncredible. And then he and Burr refused to release the letters that they wrote to each other, because it would be it'd be dishonorable to release the letters, and they weren't forced to.
Right.
You've got these letters,
insanity.
and it's like, what?
We're gonna
But
need
they're still not.
We're gonna
They're
need
still
this
not
evidence
today.
for claims, but we'd prefer to keep it. Well, all right.
Yeah.
They want to keep it, I guess. So we can do it.
And the fact that Jefferson did nothing for so long, even when it became clear what Burr was up to.
Right.
Until it started to look like Burr actually might do something.
Right.
Jefferson did nothing.
But I'm sure for a long time, Burr seemed like nothing more than a fly in the ointment. Like, this idiot's going to do what? Okay,
Sure
whatever.
is. Sure he
whatever.
is.
Yeah.
Well,
Jefferson was a smart guy. He was
he's a smart
reasonable
guy. He also didn't want war with Spain, and
No, he didn't want war with anybody,
But-
did he? He was
No.
had war fatigue at this point.
well,
didn't
also wars were a threat to democracy because
Right, right.
So he didn't want a war. But the fact that Burr was trying to incite a war should have been an alarm bell.
he? It should have been, but I don't think he would have taken it seriously. Because
he didn't.
No, because Burr.
Can you imagine what it'd be like if we had someone now, like a businessman or someone who was campaigning and people didn't take it seriously?
I can't even imagine.
Think of what the repercussions could be for our
where
country.
you just go, no, he can't win.
No,
we
it's-
don't have to do anything about
we shouldn't
that.
take this seriously.
No, I can't. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. No, good thing we live in a free country.
Yeah.
What a great story.
Yeah, it was really great, Jeff. Thank you so much, sir.
American history is my favorite. European's fun and
I know.
all that.
I've got
but
a story that I'm looking at for a future episode about some early American history stuff as well.
Do we get a hint?
Nope.
Because we're too smart for hints.
Absolutely.
We'll get it, won't we? Yeah. That's what it is.
You
We're
actually would.
geniuses.
You actually would. It's a story
What do
you
we-
probably both know pretty well. But.
Okay, good. Good. I love this story. I had no idea.
So Lin-Manuel Miranda,
Yeah.
he should make this into the sequel of Hamilton.
Absolutely.
That would be great. It'd be a comedy
Burr.
though. It is like it's like
A Burr in the ointment.
the whole story is almost like the end of
Comedy of
Act 1
Errors.
and the beginning of Act 2 of Big River.
Yeah.
Like where he meets the Duke and the King or whatever, and they're con men. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
This feels like a slice from that show.
Like an epic grifter.
It really does. Even so
I
far
think you
as
should play the Irishman in the musical.
I would love to play Grip Hook the Irishman.
Yeah, absolutely. Snape.
Yeah, Snape the Irishman.
Severus Snape, the Irishman.
I would love to play
Blenner,
that
Blenner
guy.
Hazard Island.
Blenner Hazard Island. I got my own island. You can sit here for nothing.
We would love to hear your thoughts, Deckheads, on the story of Aaron Burr, whether or not you think it'd be a good musical. We'd love to hear,
I think it can't be now.
love to hear your
That's the
thoughts
shame of it.
on Young Frankenstein. Love to hear your thoughts on Mel Brooks,
Mel
comedies, and just anything.
Braille.
ham and
Yeah,
cheese,
whether or
Braille.
not you speak Braille.
Yeah,
as fluently
Speaking
as I
of-
do.
Yeah, you do well, Jared.
Thank you.
I
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
your work on
You're
it.
better at it than any man I've ever met.
That's right.
Absolutely,
That's right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Popcorn. Do you like popcorn with cheese on it, or
No.
or butter, or
Butter only.
I like classic popcorn. I'm
Butter
just butter
only.
and
Extra
salt,
salt, yeah.
kind of guy. I like the caramel popcorn, but that's really a new subject right now.
It's
A
really a
subject.
new
It's
subject.
A new
subject.
subject.
Well,
it's-
I'm having my stroke.
It's a subject for another episode.
Right.
So until that episode, dear Deckheads, we say to you, stay wild.
Say what I'll.
By the edge.
Was that a code?
Speak